One more sneaky little question on 3.4. So in this situation, there's something controlled by it's autosomal and it's dominant. Okay, so autosomal means it's not on one of the sex chromosomes. So it's not linked to the X. So it's chromosomes 1 through 22, not that 23rd pair. So the question is saying, how do we know that it's not sex-linked? How do we know that it's not linked to the X chromosome? So they tell us it's dominant. So that we know. So that means, let's use the letter D for whatever reason. So you are affected if you're big D, or if you're big D, little d. Both of those situations, you'll have this Achu syndrome. And the only way you're not affected or you're unaffected is if you're little d. Okay, so if it was sex-linked, right? And we're looking at this couple right here. If it was sex-linked, that means this woman would be X little b, right? Because she's unaffected and it's sex-linked. The male who's affected, he would be X with a big B and then a Y with nothing on it. So what here shows us that this is not the case? So let's do a cross, right? Kind of wish I gave myself a little more room. So let's put the male over here. So he's big B and Y, and the female is little b. Okay. So in this situation, we'd have a female that's affected. In this situation, we'd have a female that's affected. In this situation, we'd have a male that is unaffected, right? Because the Y is, and in this situation, we'd have a male that's unaffected. So we're looking for a male who's affected, right? So right here, they had an affected male, and that would be impossible if it was controlled by a dominant allele. So the correct answer is B. The fact that there's an affected male in generation 2 shows us that it's not sex-linked. So what must be the case, what must be true, is that this male was probably heterozygous, right? So let's stay with the, I don't know why I switched to B's, I'm sorry. So the male was heterozygous, big D, and she was little d. And in this situation, it doesn't matter because it's not controlling gender. So if we just did the whole cross, you could get the different situations, and you could get children that are affected or children that are unaffected. So tricky. Again, with these kind of questions, just write out as much as you can. Just one final note, think about studying. Please remember that cystic fibrosis, these are one of the things that IB wants you to remember. Cystic fibrosis is controlled by recessive alleles. So if you have 2 small c's, that means you have cystic fibrosis. And the one they wanted you to remember for a dominantly controlled disease is Huntington's. So Huntington's you can get if there's the presence of one dominant allele.